And now it's time for Leadership of the Leaf with Dice and Austin. Let's jump in with a cut and a light.
And welcome everybody. My name is Austin.
I'm Dice.
And this is Leadership of the Leaf. So first, I want to start off absolutely our last episode. We talked about the Killer Bee cigar. We mistakenly put it under a different name. The actual cigar is a Blackworks Studio. It's a Killer Bee is by Blackworks Studio, which is a brand of Oveja, an Oveja Negra brand, which is also is Emilio Black Label Trading Company and Dissident, along with Blackworks Studio, and that Killer Bee is part of that Blackworks Studio. So just want to put that out there that we were wrong. We mistakenly put some other stuff out there, and it was not the correct thing.
But that's not to take away anything from the cigar, because I smoke Killer Bee and I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful. Yes.
Absolutely. It was a great cigar. We just put it under the wrong name, and that was 100% our fault. But Dice, what are you smoking on tonight?
Tonight, for this very episode, I am smoking an Liga Series D 135 edition, anniversary edition.
Okay.
The size is a Perfecto. It's a 5.5 by 54.
Nice. Very nice. I am smoking a CAO America and a Monument. It is a 6 1/4 by 54, but I kind of wonder if everybody knows what the 6 1/4 by 54 even mean.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because this episode we will be talking about basic shapes and sizes of cigars, and for our leadership portion, we're going to dive into some accountability.
Accountability is a huge thing, but let's do our cigars, because of course we love our cigars here on Leadership of the Leaf, and we love to also talk about leadership. So the first thing I think I want to talk about is the Parejo type cigar, which that means flush or straight, and it's your classic cigar shape. It's the one with the rounded end on top. It's has the butt cap. Usually is typically about a double butt cap, and they're straight through the entire cigar and the same thickness throughout.
So when you are talking about the straight edges and round on the end, there's quite a few cigar shapes that fit that category.
Right. Yes, that is an umbrella category, if you will.
So are you meaning like different sizes, different shapes, like I would assume box press?
Yep.
Consider that? That's definitely straight on the sides, right?
100%. And the biggest thing is as long as it's the same thickness throughout. So if you ever know about the Drew Estate, the egg cigar, right? That is a different type of cigar called a figurado, but it has a giant egg shape in the middle and thins out towards the ends, so that way you can smoke it a lot easier. But box press is the thing about box press is it's just a square shaped finish. Looks kind of like a box, introduced as a way of saving money originally, but it's grown from there. These cigars are usually they say they help enhance certain flavors, and because they allow more air to be drawn through the cigar.
I do know, I talked to a few people around this before, and it actually, quite a few people do not like the box press, because sometimes they feel that it's tightly packed. But I know by the design, it's not really as tight packed. It just seems that way because of the shape.
Yes. I will say that I've had a couple of these cigars that are too tightly packed, where I've had to use a draw tool or a special cut or something to try to help loosen them up. But because they tend to be tighter packed, they burn a little bit longer, and they provide a little bit more of a consistent flavor.
People do hate on them. I don't know why, but depends on what's going on. It's actually a cigar shape I prefer. So if you like playing poker with your buddies, or you just need to sit your cigar down for a quick second, box press will not roll off the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that people hate on them because usually they're typically associated with budget sticks, right? These are the sticks that are $5 and under, or you want to say $7 and under, something like that. And so because they were originally designed to save money, people tend to associate them with cheaper cigars, which I don't believe that is the case as often anymore, because a lot of people are going with them more and more. I see them more and more all the time.
What I like to do is using the buy two method, as you said. And if there's two cigars that are the exact same, and one is box press and one is just a regular Parejo in size, not being box press, it's fun to actually get those and smoke one and then smoke the other and kind of compare those notes and see where you actually stand.
I do, yeah. That is absolutely something that's very interesting to me, because I've had box press cigars that I really enjoyed, and then I bought a regular Pareto, and the flavor notes just didn't pop as much for me, and I think that's because the air to smoke mixture was not the same.
I can definitely see that with the box press because of how the airflow goes. So I can definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and another kind of bit under this is the Culebra, which it means snake. And if you see these, you know what we're talking about. There are 3 cigars that are braided, wound, whatever you want to call it, together. Usually there's a band on both ends, and the cigar is the same thickness throughout. It doesn't mean it's always straight, but it's the same thickness throughout, the same shape throughout. They're just very wet when they braid them together, so they braid it, and it's basically 3 cigars in one. So, a little bit more exotic. Definitely, they have to be a lot wetter, more moisture in them when rolling and storing these to prevent the cracking of them. You kind of got to be careful when you're unbraiding them, taking them apart if you're gonna share them. It's kind of nice if you and 2 of your friends want to smoke the same cigar. You can buy one of these, and it's basically 3 cigars in one. They can share a single cap, so you can smoke them as one. I've seen a few of these, but that's almost like smoking 3 cigars at one time. If you put 3 cigarettes in your mouth and try to smoke it, you're going to get a nicotine buzz. So be cautious on that.
The Culebra, or a snake, Brady, however you want to say it. I heard 2 interesting stories concerning that cigar, actually.
Okay.
One is the factory floor where cigars are made. Back in the day, the cigar rollers would get 3 cigars. That was a allotted amount that they could smoke. And in order for the foreman or the head guy to understand that they're not smoking the product, they would smoke one of the Culebras because there's 3 cigars into one. So they can tell by the shape of it that they're not smoking the actual product, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. I could see that. You don't want to get high on your own supply, so to speak, but you want to make sure that every worker gets taken care of. So that's an interesting way of doing it.
The second story I heard is a perfect wedding cigar. So the groom, the best man, and the father of the bride would share this cigar because it's 3 cigars wrapped in one. So they'll take it apart, and all 3 of them would smoke together to kind of bring a closer bond for that wedding, that marriage.
That's I kind of wish that I had known that when I got married. Although that being said, I don't think my father-in-law would have smoked it with me, being the health nut that he is. But it's definitely a cool kind of way. So if you guys are looking to guys or girls looking for a way to celebrate or bring your man something a little bit closer to your father or father-in-law and then your best man, that's definitely a cool way of doing it for sure.
Yeah, kind of like intertwining the bond all under one cigar because everybody's smoking from that. Yeah, so I heard that. I thought that was a pretty cool concept as well.
That is a very, very cool concept. So that encompasses, I would probably say, I don't know, 85% of cigars out there. There's a lot more, but I would say that, even if you have a torpedo in, like the CAO monument had a torpedo in, right? It's a barber pole, but it had a torpedo in. I would still throw it under the Parejo umbrella, so to speak, because it's the same thickness throughout except for the end cap, but the end cap is also supposed to be cut off, right? So I would still kind of throw it under that versus like a Figurado, which is basically anything that's not a Parejo, right? So it doesn't have the same straightness, same thickness throughout that entire cigar, which I believe you're smoking would be a Figurado as well.
It most definitely is more commonly referred to as a perfecto from the shape and the size of it. The shape, it generally has tapered on one of the ends or both of the ends.
Yeah, and the perfecto even has kind of a sub umbrella of stuff underneath it, which is pretty interesting, but usually perfectos have 2 tapered sides, right? One on the head, one on the foot, and it kind of evens out through the middle and then goes back into taper. But another one that is, like I just said, is the torpedo, which is literally just a sloping tapered head that curves to a point. This monument had a torpedo. Like I said, I throw it under Parejo, but it probably should be under that Figurado. It just has that tapered point to a torpedo, right? If you think of a torpedo from a military vessel, that's what you're looking for.
Cone shape of the head supposed to help funnel the flavors down to a certain point, so you have a more robust or intense flavor profile as you come to the smoke in your mouth. the swirl.
Yeah, I could definitely tell this one. It's got a little bit of spice, a little bit of cream to it. It's very, very good. But the torpedo should not be confused with the bellicoso, which is
that's a fun word.
Yeah, bellicoso. It's supposed to resemble a bullet. Now, this one, the bellicoso has a sharper taper. If you think of like a bullet, like like you would put in a M4 or a AR-15 or something like that, where it has that sharp kind of curve taper to a point, that would be a bellicoso, versus a torpedo is a gentler slope, and that's the best way to do it. A lot of them, they kind of get interchanged quite a bit. They kind of get confused quite a bit, but there are two different shapes to that.
Right. Back in the day, they used to use a spent bullet shell to use as a punch, and if you can kind of picture how a spent bullet shell would look from like an assault rifle or M16, that is pretty much the shape of a bellicoso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, I've had a couple bellicosos. They're really good. I have no problem with them, but I think it all again comes back down to the point of is the flavor profile something that I like or not.
Right. That's what it really comes down to. The whole point in the shape of these cigars is to try to enhance the flavor profile that you're going to be getting in the long run from the different shapes and sizes. Also, with these different shapes and sizes that come out, I do know it takes a more skilled roller to make these cigars.
Yep.
So if you have any of the cigars that fits under the Figurado shape, you're probably going to pay a little extra for, because they have to have a blender that's not a novice. They got to have someone that has got some years under their belt before they can roll.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of these master blenders for these big companies, right? You think United, H. Upman, Drew Estate, Dunbarton, Padron, I could, the list goes on, right? If they have this type of shape, there's a reason for it. What that master blender is looking for and trying to provide, that experience, that flavor that they're trying to provide, comes out best usually in these shapes. And I will say that there is a difference. Now, whether or not you can detect that difference, all comes down to whether your palate is refined enough, advanced enough to kind of get to pick up on those subtle hints.
Getting the taste and the flavor profile of this one, being that it's perfecto in shape, definitely in this first third, I'm getting to start off with white pepper. I'm not a huge fan of the white pepper, but there's some cedar mixed in with this one. So I can tell from the way it's funneling down that the cedar is coming on top of the white pepper, which kind of balances out like almost perfectly. I can see the height for this shape.
Really? Interesting. So with that, do you think that because sometimes what I like to do is I like to try to go and I try to think of, would this fit in a better, because I've had cigars where I'm like, man, I think this would go better in this shape. I think this would be a better cigar with this shape, because it would draw out whatever flavor that I want more or less than the shape that I'm currently smoking. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever thought about that?
I have, and it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking of this cigar, exactly what you just said. If it was a normal shape, or the Parejo. If it was a normal Parejo shape, then more than likely I would have nothing but a white pepper bomb to start with. And more than likely I would probably not lean towards liking this cigar. But because of the design and shape of it, it actually brings a cedar in with it. Because if it was all straight, then I would have a straight shot of both those at the same time, as opposed to having the mixture that is funneling.
Yeah, it kind of punch you in the mouth a little bit, that flavor. Interesting, because, when you first showed it to me, I almost thought, because the way you had your hand, I almost thought it was like a pyramide, which would be a pyramid. That's tapered all the way down the body. What's the one that Crazy Alice is a pyramid?
Crazy Alice is a perfect pyramid shape. I love smoking that one Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee. Yeah,
that one is kind of referred to in the same token as part of the three sweet bitches, which is common name to a Sweet Jane, Crazy Alice, and a Fat Bottom Betty. Those are all kind of sweeter cigars. They all have slightly different flavor profiles. They all definitely have different shapes, but they're all very, very good. But the thing about the pyramid is, if you think of like a pyramid, you think of the pyramids of Egypt, right? It's thicker at the foot than at the base of the head. So, and those can be really good because it kind of starts you out with a lot of different flavors, and then it tapers down to like one solid flavor that you've had throughout, and it just kind of brings it to the forefront at the end, which can be really, really good if it's blended right.
That's why I like that Crazy Alice, because it starts off like almost super, I wouldn't say super sweet. Super is not the right word, but it has a strong sweet to it. And I drink my coffee dark and black. So with my black coffee and how sweet it is to start with, because the head is so thick, and then as it tapers down and my coffee is getting colder, everything just balances out just great.
That's nice. That's very nice. Yeah, I know I've smoked a Crazy Alice with you, and I enjoyed the crap out of it. I've also smoked a Sweet Jane, which was a Parejo, and it was very, very good, but it almost made me wonder how it would be in a Pyramide, just to see what I like to sit there and think, like, what would this taste like if it was a different shape? It's always interesting to try to think of that sort of stuff, especially as you get a little bit more experience in cigars.
Well, I haven't really seen too many Pyramide out there other than Crazy Alice. I'm trying to think now. Right now, the only thing that comes to mind is Crazy Alice, but I'm very confident there's more out there.
I'm pretty sure there's an acid that comes in a Pyramide shape. I know that some blenders, some manufacturers don't like to do it because, you got to think of the size and the boxes and how they pack it and how many they can pack in there. It's easier to pack in a box press or a Parejo and you get the same number in each box, but a Pyramide, you almost lose out if you're not careful. You could lose out on quite a bit of cigars if they're not all packaged in there appropriately.
Yeah, I can definitely you want to follow the money as you spoke of before.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last kind of big shape under a Figurado would be the chisel, right?
Yes.
And the chisel it's a chisel, right? If you think of a chisel tool, it just tapers down and kind of ends in a flat torpedo, basically. It resembles the end of a chisel. I don't know how else to put it. That's why there's a reason they call it the chisel, and it looks like exactly like a chisel.
Have you had one before?
I think I've had one that I don't ask me what it is because I don't remember. But
Recluse?
Maybe that was it. Those are difficult for me because and a lot of the Figurados are difficult to cut. They usually end up in some sort of straight cut with most of them because that torpedo, because of that pointed end, they don't really fit that great in V cuts. It's very hard to punch out of those because of that weird shaped head. So they usually end up with like a straight cut, which is not a bad cut by any shape of the imagination, but you don't get as much freedom to cut them how you want in some aspects like that.
Right. I know the chisel I smoked, I'm pretty confident it was Recluse. I could be wrong, but I didn't end up cutting that head. What I ended up doing was slicing with the plane of the chisel and kind of just had like a slot. Yeah,
I could see that. Like I said, some of them cut really well, some of them don't. You just kind of got to figure out what works for you guys and gals out there to cut. I say experiment. That's the best thing I can say is experiment with the different cuts on the different sizes. Because I've definitely done a V cut on a chisel or V cut on either a bellicoso or a torpedo. It works out okay for the most part, but sometimes it doesn't work out the way I want it to.
Yeah, I had a few where it didn't take off enough. And I ended up just with like this soggy fishtail like this.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And that's the thing you gotta watch out for is if you're not getting enough of a draw, sometimes it can be the way you cut the cigar. If you're getting a hard draw, look at the way the end of the cigar is shaped, and then sit there and go, do I really have enough surface area where I'm drawing on it to give me enough airflow to actually properly taste the cigar?
Yeah, definitely. If you're not getting enough airflow to actually get the proper flavor profiles that the master blender is designed, then you're kind of throwing yourself off because you're just getting a mouthful of smoke and it's just not worth it. You're not enjoying the cigar how it's intended to be enjoyed.
Right. So, and that's the big thing. But, all of these cigar shapes come in different sizes. And I think I said before, mine is a 6 1/4 by 54. I believe is the number on there. 6 1/4 by 54. But how long was it? Let me ask you this. How long was it before you actually figured out what those numbers actually meant?
Sadly, it was quite some time within my cigar game before I even actually thought about it. I just looked and I was like, man, this cigar is smaller than the other one, but it costs more. Like, why would I buy that one? So when I first started, my go-to cigar, the size, was a Churchill size. I felt like I was getting more for my money every time. I learned now that that's not the way that everything is supposed to go, but Churchill size is usually about 7 by 48.
Yep.
And that's a pretty healthy cigar. But now I know that that's definitely not the case. There's many different sizes, many different lengths and ring gauges out there.
So So yeah, you said 7 by 48. So let's just dive into what those numbers mean, right? So 7 is a Churchill. So 7 by 48 is a Churchill. So the first number, 6 1/4, 7, 5, whatever it is the length in inches of that cigar, right? It's how long is that cigar measured from the cap to the foot of that cigar. How long is it? And those vary. I mean, we were talking earlier. Asylum is putting out a 9 by 90 cigar here soon. The Asylum 13. Let me just say the Flathead 660 is a 6-inch by 60 ring gauge cigar, which is a pretty decent size if you think about it. The ring gauge, though, that's what took me the longest. I could not figure out for the life of me when I first started what the second number meant, and that's just the ring gauge, and that is measured in 1/64 of an inch in circumference. So you sit there and you think about if I said 6 by 64, that's a 6-inch cigar by a 1 inch across diameter, 1 inch diameter. I think I said circumference earlier. I meant diameter ring gauge. So it's 6 inches by long by 1 inch around, 1 inch across. That's how big that cigar is.
Right. Thinking of that, you mentioned an Asylum. The Asylum is releasing the 9 by 90 April 1st. It's kind of like an April Fool's thing, but it's an actual real cigar that they're releasing. Imagine like 9 inches of cigar with a 90-inch ring gauge. So that means that ring gauge over an inch long.
Right. It was almost 1.5 inches in all reality.
So that's going to be a pretty big cigar to fit in your mouth.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of big ring gauges. I like to keep my ring gauges around somewhere between 45 and 55. 60 is about my limit for ring gauges. I don't like to go too much bigger than that, which would be like about a Gordo, which is a 6 by 60. And there's a gajillion. Doing the research on all these different sizes, it will kill you because there's so many different ring gauges that are actually like approved by the cigar, whatever you want to call it, the cigar industry, so to speak.
That's the thing with ring gauges and these sizes. Each cigar company, they kind of bring out their own numbers that they want, and they kind of fit it to the standards that people are used to. Like, there's a few cigars that Petite Corona, which is just a play on Corona, right? So a cigar company comes out with one and then call it a 4x5 by 42. So it's a little smaller in length, and the ring gauge is a little small also. So it fits the kind of Corona profile, but the company, they wanted to call it a Petite Corona. So that's just a play on Corona, and they kind of made their size, so they just added the word Petite in front of it. So it's Petite Corona, which is a good cigar size, especially when you want to smoke outside in the cold.
Yeah, absolutely. As like I said, the Gordo is a 6 by 60, but then you talk about like a Gordito, that's a 4.5 by 60, and the ones that come to mind with this size would be a nub, like from Oliva. They're short, but they're fat. They don't look like much. They don't look like they have a lot of flavor. They don't look like they've smoked all that long. But I tell you, I smoked a couple of nubs and I've enjoyed all of them, and they last for probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how often you puff.
The Gordito cigar is one of my go-to when I am grilling because of the size and the shape and the time frame. It's just something about that cigar and grilling outside. It just fits me perfectly.
Yep. A Churchill is a 7 by 48 like we talked about, but then you go into, you get into some smaller stuff like a Rothschild is a 4x5, 4.5 inch cigar by 48. That's a pretty good size, I'd say. I prefer a little bit like, I think our three favorite, I don't want to speak for you, but I think our three favorite would be either a Robusto, a Corona, or a Toro. And a Robusto would be a 5 by 50, which is, I think most master blenders, when they're tasting their cigars, they're tasting their blends, they tend to blend either in a Robusto or a Toro type size. So 5 inch by 50 ring gauge, and a Toro is a 6 by 50. The Corona is right there in the middle. It's a 5.5 by 44. So it's a little bit short. It's a little bit shorter than a Toro and a little bit not as thick.
Yeah, those definitely the three like main. I don't want to say main. That's probably not a fair statement, but those are the three almost like go-to sizes, especially starting out to get their flavors blended properly, as you were saying. And those are the ones that are going to provide the absolutely most from the binder to the actual like cigar.
The filler.
The filler. That's the word I was looking for. The filler that's inside each of the cigars. long filler with short fillers. That's the one that they really want to put the test to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can keep going up from there. You got the Panatella, which is a 6x34, so it's a long, skinny one. The Lonsdale's a 6.5 by 42, so again, a little bit longer, a little bit thicker. You got that Churchill, like you said. Then you have the Lancero, which I always think the Lancero is, I think of it as like a long cigarillo, like a cigarillo. If you think about it, it's not normally like a real size, but they're usually about 4 inches long by maybe a 20 ring gauge or so. And the Lancero is just they call it a Lancero because it looks like a lance. It's a long, thin cigar.
Yeah, those sizes, the longer ones that has a really smaller ring gauge. For me, they're really trying to highlight the binder and the wrapper. They really want to pull the flavors from the wrapper more than the actual filler.
Yeah. And sometimes I've noticed, I've mentioned before in previous episodes where I got sick of Oliva, and I had everything from Toros to Robustos and a couple Churchills. And I can tell you that those Churchills taste different than the Toros and the Robustos because that smoke has longer to travel, so it cools down more before it hits my tongue, and so it changes that flavor profile and just enough where I can actually notice a little bit of a difference. Some of the more subtle flavors come out, not as much as the spices, but a lot of those stronger cocoa, the coffees come out a little bit more, which is good. But they definitely take a lot longer to smoke.
Yeah, the Churchills, when they make them, they kind of design them so the long filler is near the back and give you more of the short filler in the front, so that normally the first third will dramatically change from the second third because of how they actually fill their cigar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think those require a lot more of. If you've never done it, I recommend, and I think you followed me on this after I recommended it to you. About every 3 or 4 puffs, blowing through your cigar to blow out that old smoke to keep that smoke flavor, the true flavor in there. Because if you think about a let's just say a Churchill, right?
Yeah,
it's a 7x48, so 7 inches long, which is really quite long if you think about it. That's by the time that smoke comes through that whole thing, 1, it's cool, 2, it can get a little bit more of a spicy flavor, so to speak. So if you want to sometimes you can sit there and smoke on it and puff on it. Sometimes you can get an older smoke flavor. So if you've ever walked into a cigar lounge or if you've smelled an ashtray, you can start kind of tasting that stuff and it's like, oh, that doesn't taste good anymore. Well, you got old smoke trapped in there. You need to blow through it, get that old smoke out. That doesn't hurt your cigar as long as you're not just blowing through like you would on a breathalyzer or something.
A pinwheel.
Yeah. Just blow on it a little bit until you can see some smoke come out, and then try inhaling and see if that changes your flavor profile. Because it just changes a little bit.
It's like clearing out the chamber, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I sat there. I think I went through probably years of my cigar experience before somebody was like, I noticed you never blow through your cigars. Why is that? And I was like, what do you mean blow through my cigars? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I do such a thing? I was like, I'm supposed to be inhaling these cigars, not inhaling like you would a cigarette, just puffing on it to get the smoke in my mouth and then blow it out, because you never want to inhale a cigar. You never want to bring that down into your lungs.
When you do, you're going to turn green real quick.
Yeah, if you're not used to it, absolutely. Or if you are used to it, you can start sounding like this. I love my cigars. So, and that's fine. If that's how you want to enjoy your cigar, that's how you want to enjoy your cigar. I'm not judging here, but it definitely can make a difference in the overall enjoyability of a cigar, for sure.
But hearing you talk like that just now, I just had to take a drink of my Hennessy here, and I'm just curious. What are you drinking?
Well, currently I'm sipping on a nice mojito, which is interesting to me because it's got that minty sweetness, and this cigar is getting me notes of sweet cream and like almost a cocoa earthy type taste. And that sweetness of the mojito is really bringing out that sweet cream in the cigar, and it's really interesting pairing. Don't know if I would do it again, but it's very good though.
Are you still in your first third or your second?
I think I'm about just entering my second third right about now.
Mine is burning a little quick. I'm actually in my second, and the cedar is definitely still there, so I'm not sure if I would recommend this cigar to you because it actually has like a cedar flavor to it. So wouldn't probably be your cup of tea, but I'm definitely getting a sweet aroma from the smoke, which is leading me to have more of a chocolate tone to it. I would even go out on a limb and say dark chocolate, but that's what I'm getting from this. And it is mixing well with this Hennessy.
That's good. Yeah, I had that Cedrus, which is, if you've never had it and you like this, I love the smell of cedar. I love the smell of cedar. Absolutely, probably one of my favorite wood smells of all time. But man, tasting it throughout an entire cigar, it just not my cup of tea. I just can't. I can't say it is. If it's there and it's a subtle note, I think I get a little bit of cedar through this. It's not bad, but if it's that main flavor note in a cigar, it's definitely not my cup of tea.
Some of the cigar sizes that I know you mentioned before, we was talking about Corona. There's quite a few more Corona sizes out there.
Yeah. You got the double Corona, which is a 7.5 by 38. Then you have the Grand Corona, which is a 9 1/4 by 47. You start getting into longer smoke. But then you can keep going past that. You sit there and think of, like I mentioned, the Drew Estate Egg. Well, that is probably a 6 or 7 inch cigar, but at its fattest, I would say that it's probably like an 80 ring gauge, 84 ring gauge cigar or something like that. You think of the Woody, right? The Woody is it's like a 2 foot long cigar by 54 inch ring gauge, I think, which is just stupid long. You try to keep the ash alive on that mother trucker, and good luck, dude, without that falling all in your lap.
One thing I do know about the Grand Corona size, doing a little research, that's almost like the Cuban size back in the day, Fidel Castro and all them. It's commonly referred to as A size, and it's normally around that area, the Cuban type cigars for that time frame.
Yeah, that Grand Corona is kind of what I think of. When I think of those, those old cartoons, those old shows where the guy is just sitting there chewing on a cigar, and he's just chewing, and then maybe lighting it up every now and then. He just never takes it out of his mouth. That's what I think of as I think of a Grand Corona. And I think we talked to a guy that worked at a cigar shop, and he said, I don't mind the Churchills. I don't mind the Grand Coronas, because what he does is he'll sit there and he'll put them in his mouth and he'll chew on the end of it, and he won't even light it up. But then after a while, if he's, once he's ready to light it up, he'll just cut the end off that he chewed on, light the end of it, and then smoke it like that, which is an interesting way to do it for sure. I haven't tried it because I don't normally buy a Grand Corona. I don't normally go, like I said, much past about 5 or 6 inches. Usually that's because the time limit I place on myself to smoke a cigar.
As I said before, I used to only purchase Churchills because I thought that was the cigar size, and that's the one I'm supposed to get because it seems like I can get more for my money. But then the time is exactly what you nailed it. If you don't have that much time, Petite Corona is probably more your speed. But the average cigar length, I would say more would be a Robusto or a Toro. That's about the average cigar time frame that I want to be sitting. Unless it's like super nice out, or I'm surrounded by a bunch of friends sitting out on the patio or something, and I have the time, and I know we're going to sit there probably half the night smoking cigars. I'll pull out a Churchill.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pull out a Churchill if it's good time, good weather, good friends, good food, whatever, the good drinks. If I'm playing cards with a buddy of mine, we're playing poker or something, and I'm going to be there for 3 hours, 4 hours, fine. I'll pull out I'll bring a Churchill and a Toro, or a Churchill and a Robusto or something like that. I can then, once I kind of know my times on how quickly I smoke something, I can pinpoint down a little bit easier of how long a cigar is going to be. I used to make it a challenge for myself. My wife would come out and we'd watch a show on my laptop. We'd come out to the patio and we'd watch a show or something, and I would actually try, if it was a 3-hour movie, I'd say, okay, let me get 2 Robustos, and that should be about an hour and a half a piece, so that's about 3 hours, so that should last me the whole movie. And usually I was about right on key. Towards the end of the second one, I'd get slowed down a little bit just because I've had so much to drink and I'm slowing down on my cigars anyways.
Yeah, finish it off at the credits, right?
That's what I try to, it always made me laugh. Ron White, if you've ever watched any of his stand-up specials, he sits there and he'll come out with a cigar lit and a glass of scotch, right? And he'll sit there and puff on his cigar and tell his whole set and everything else. And sit, and about the time he's done is about the time his cigar's out. And I was like, man, that is so cool how he times that perfectly.
It's going to be a good day, Tater.
yeah, exactly. So that always interests me. So I always sit there and try to go, well, can I do that? Let me see. And I know that you and me have tried it before where you're like, oh, I got to go run this errand in 2 hours. Okay, well, let's figure out, what size of cigar we want, because that's going to last us 2 hours and we'll smoke one, or let's try to smoke two so we both get shorter, smaller cigars.
Yeah, I remember back in the day we used to have like a smoke section at lunchtime on Fridays. And I try to normally get like a Rothschild or Robusto, because that's about enough time to enjoy it during a lunch break, our lunch break.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the thing, like these ring gauges, I say that the time varies for each person, because it all is going to depend on how often you puff. It's going to depend on if you're outside in a lounge, because the wind can change a little bit, how quickly you're smoking. And then you also got to sit there and, am I going to keep puffing every 30 seconds to a minute, or am I going to puff every about 20 seconds? Some people just puff quite a bit quicker than others. I know you tend to smoke cigars a little bit quicker than I do.
Yeah, I try to get quick puffs in my cheeks and try to pull the flavor from that, and then exhale the smoke. I puff, I think, a lot more often than you do. You normally take longer pulls. And
that is something I've just learned over the years. Something I've tended to do, listening to the cigar greats. Steve Saka, Master Blenders. Good Lord, I wish I could remember his name. I'll say it's like Hernandez, AJ
Hernandez.
Yeah, Master Blender. They say, hey, you should take longer, slower pulls through your cigar, because it doesn't heat up the tobacco quite as much, and then you don't get as much of a tongue bite. Which, if you don't know the term tongue bite, that's that spiciness, the kind of pinch you feel on your tongue as you're smoking through a cigar. And if you overheated the cigar, the pipe smokers really do this really well, because if you get a pipe too hot and you feel a kind of a kick on your tongue or a spiciness on your tongue, you're smoking it too fast. From the pipe, you're smoking the pipe too fast. You're overheating that tobacco. So that kind of is where that came from. So it's just one of those things I've learned over the years.
Well, I stopped to take a look at my burn line on this Liga, and the burn line on my Liga is amazing, razor sharp. It's just it's burning very well. It's a very nice burning, sweet aroma. It is a great cigar. I would recommend this cigar.
That's nice. I'm actually having to touch up my cigar a little bit right now, because it's starting to canoe on me. And this is nothing to say against the quality of the cigar. It's just sometimes cigars tend to canoe. Other cigars don't.
But as we mentioned before, they all roll by hand. So there's going to be different people, different rollers, different skill levels of the rolling. So every now and again, you could get one. It could be just a leaf.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing.
No, not by any means. Not by any means. So, as always, if you guys want to see what we're smoking, if you want to see the band so you can try to go, and you can't remember the names, we try to put this stuff out on our Instagram, at Leadership of the Leaf, and as well as our YouTube. Sometimes we'll post on YouTube channels, or we'll post on our website, which is nsplume.wixsite.com /Leadership of the Leaf. That's nsplume.wixsite.com /Leadership of the Leaf. We'll try to post it on there as much as we can, and as well as our Instagram. Our Instagram is really where we do a lot of our posting of pictures and everything else that we do.
And by all means, if you go to the website, join the mailing list. That'll keep you updated on when new episodes will be coming out, what new episodes will be featuring, and just give you an idea of what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of the best ways to keep in touch with us, because it has links to our Instagram and our YouTube page as well. But I think that's the sizes is one of the biggest challenges in the cigar industry, because if you just go into it and you don't have a cigar mentor or somebody to kind of teach you the ropes, and you just kind of like, hey, I listen to these guys on the podcast and I want to go out and get these cigars. If you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know the size you're looking for, if you don't go to a good brick and mortar spot that'll teach you this sort of stuff and answer your questions, you can get lost very easily. And then you just start looking for, well, this looks about the right size, and you could pick it up. But a lot of these cigars, they'll have it on the barcode, right above the barcode. They'll print the size, they'll print the inches and the ring gauge right there on that wrapper. So definitely keep an eye out for that and figure out what you like, what fits your timeline the best, and just smoke what you enjoy.
Yeah, if you're still kind of confused, you can always reach out to us, email, instant message, DM, whatever the cool thing is to say, and we'll help you out as much as we can. That way you don't make the same mistake like I did, where I was just purchasing Churchills, because that's what I thought you're supposed to purchase. That's the cigar to smoke, right? So now that I'm educated, I know the difference between a Lancero and a Churchill compared to a Corona with a petite Corona. Like, I understand the different sizes, different reasons for the sizes, time, and flavor profile. It's what you're looking for. So you have to get out there, you have to research, you have to, by all means, buy one of each size if that's what you want to do until you figure out the size that fits your profile the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Experiment. We talked about that in the very first episode. Go outside your comfort zone. Step outside your comfort zone. Try something new. Talk to other people, and you'll find certain things that you enjoy, certain things you don't enjoy, and everybody's different. I know people who they love the Asylum brand of cigars, and Asylum is known for their rather big cigars. They're big ring gauges, they're long cigars, and that's what they're known for. And if that's what you like, hey, go for it. That's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, the Asylum has they used to have a spokesperson called Big Time Tom, and he had a cigar, and he was a big guy that smoked a big cigar. I mean, if you could think of what's that Marvel character, the enemy of Spider-Man, Kingpin. If you could think of Kingpin, you wouldn't think of Kingpin smoking a petite Corona, right? You would think more of Kingpin smoking some Corona or a Churchill, or even something bigger like what Asylum would offer.
Yeah,
so it's all on the person. I know I was afraid of Lancero for a long time because I was like, it seems like a female cigar. It's so skinny, like Virginia Slim cigarettes. But now that I understand that they're trying to pull the flavor more off the wrapper and the filler, as opposed to off the wrapper and the binder more than the filler. And the filler is just more, not an afterthought, but more of a compliment to the actual wrapper.
Yeah, and that's the big thing that you kind of got to understand why they blend in that size to be able to go for that size, and that will help you sit there and try to figure out, okay, well, if this is a Nicaraguan Habano wrapper, okay, I'm going to get these kind of earthy, these maybe a little bit of subtle spice kind of notes or something like that. You can kind of sit there and maybe be a little bit more on the lookout for these flavor notes that they're trying to give you, and that's just something interesting to kind of think about.
One thing I know with these cigars that as I segue into the accountability side, the reason they make these cigars the way they do is they want to have the accountability of what their flavor profile is supposed to be. So we're going to take a short pause before we get into our leadership segment of accountability. Hey, Austin.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you was doing this leadership of the Leaf podcast, and you were smoking on some cigars.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, how would I know what cigars you're smoking?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question. At the beginning of the episodes, we always talk about what cigars we're smoking. But if you want to see a picture of what the band looks like, because maybe you can't find it or we didn't explain it good enough, you can always go to our Instagram or our website, and we'll post pictures of what we're smoking and usually what we're drinking with every episode. So before the break, Dice was talking about, the accountability of keeping the cigar the way that the master blender intended. And that's kind of, I think, the importance of, to get into our leadership segment, that's the importance of accountability. You want to hold that standard for every single person. I recently saw an interesting diagram, visual aid, if you will, of the difference between equality and equity. So equality the way the picture was, it said equality and equity, and it was one picture on top of another. And equality, everybody was riding the same bike. The mom, the dad, a baby, and an old person were all riding the exact same bike. And then you had the picture of equity, and you had, a big bike for the dad, a little bit smaller bike for the mom, a tricycle for the baby, and like, something else for the, a little bit smaller, kind of a medium size for the grandparent or whatever you will. But the thing is with the accountability is you want to make sure you hold that standard across the board, because if I hire you to produce a widget and I hire you to produce a widget an hour and you're producing a half a widget an hour, then are you holding the standard that I hired you to produce?
No.
And I think that's the importance of the accountability portion. You got to make sure it may somewhat not be fair, but if you're hired to do a job and the standard is produce a widget an hour, then everybody should be at least up to that standard. If they're going over that standard, those are your high performers. Those are the people that you just need to recognize.
Exactly. You mentioned before on episodes that we both like bar rescue, and what I noticed on bar rescue is you got to have the same standards for everyone. So a lot of these bar rescue bars are owned by like a dad or a granddad or a mom, and then they hire their son or their daughter to be like a manager of the bar. The thing is the owner of the bar is not holding that standard for everyone to follow, because it's their son or it's their daughter that's managing, and then letting all this stuff slide and go to the wayside, and the bar is starting to fail because the standard's not being upheld. It sucks that you have your family working for you. It doesn't suck that you have your family working for you, but you got to be in the same mindset that just because you're my son, I'm still going to hold you accountable for the actions that you're doing, because there's a standard that needs to be set. Whether you're my son or you're just some random guy I hired off the street to manage my bar, the same standard has to be held for everyone.
Absolutely. And it makes me, I say laugh, but it does. It makes me smile and kind of chuckle on the inside. When John Taffer, the host of Bar Rescue, he'll ask these owners of the bar that is the grandparent or the dad or whatever, and they say, if he wasn't your son or he wasn't your daughter or she wasn't your daughter or whatever the case is, would you still have them working for you? Would you have fired them already? And like universally almost, the answer is like, yeah, I would have fired them already. And that's the thing. You got to hold these people accountable. You can't have favoritism when you're talking about accountability, because if the standard is a widget an hour and they're not producing that widget an hour, then you need to get in that ass. You need to make sure that those people are doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I hate favoritism. I hate it to the nth degree, because it corrupts the whole accountability standard. It corrupts it from the core, because if I show favoritism to one person, then that's not fair to everyone else, and then it's going to create animosity between all your employees. Be like, well, if Snuffy can get away with it, why can't I do that? Why are you showing him favoritism? Everyone should be held to the same standard, right, boss? Right? And then if your answer is not right, then you're showing favoritism for some reason. So however you are deeming your employees to work for you, you can't show favoritism. Like, you got to love all your kids the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Whether you're a bartender, you're a mechanic, you're an engineer, you're a teacher, whatever the case is. I'm not a huge fan of standardized tests, but they serve a purpose. For if the standard is here, the standard's at X, and you got a kid that's below that over in they're pulling an R, right? Let's just say the letters, R is below X. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So maybe they need a little bit of motivation. Maybe they need a little bit of extra attention, whatever the case happens to be. You look at a bartender, I expect every bartender to produce the same old fashioned, no matter what bar I go to. And you and me have experienced this. We've gone to a bar and we've ordered old fashions from 3 bartenders. Every single one of them was different, and it blew my mind.
It was so bad that I had to take 2 of our drinks back up to the bartender. Like, I don't know what these are. They're definitely not old fashions. He asked me who made them. So of course I point the guy out, and he was like, well, what do you want me to do? Hey, I want you to make me an old fashioned, how it's supposed to be made, because I don't know what the hell that guy made. The standard is definitely not an old fashioned, because I don't know what this is.
Right. And that's the thing. It's just, it blew my mind. My wife used to work for a company over in New Mexico, and one of her coworkers said straight to the boss's face, and he accepted it. And it blew my mind that he would accept this. But she said, her coworker said, you can just expect me to be 15 to 20 minutes late every single day. You just expect it. And it blew my mind that the guy was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I was like, what? No. No, and it made my wife very upset. It made other people in that office, that business, very upset because they were like, well, how is it that she's getting away with 15 to 20 minutes late, and if I'm 5 minutes late, I get written up? This is bullshit, you know? And it's the same thing. You gotta have that standard. You gotta hold that accountability.
So if I was part of that ring that heard that I'm gonna be 15 minutes late, now I'm gonna be 15 minutes late, and if I'm getting written up because I'm 15 minutes late, now you're showing favoritism again to the person that is 15 minutes late, and the standard's not being upheld. Now the problem with that is I call it peeling the onion back. So once you start peeling the onion back, like, why is this person getting favoritism? Why is this happening this way? Now the manager or whoever is allowing that, why isn't he being held accountable for keeping his people under control? Because now I have to do extra work because somebody's 15 minutes late. They're supposed to fill up the ice buckets, not me. But because they're late and we got customers, I got to fill up the ice bucket because I hold myself to a higher standard because I don't want the process to fail.
Right. Or you have pride in your work, whatever the case happens to be. And that's the thing to me, like, you know, one of those, I will say that the company that probably does that I've seen that I think everybody has interaction experience with, that the standards are the standards, would be McDonald's. If I go get a quarter pounder with cheese in Florida, it will taste the exact same as a quarter pounder of cheese in California, Washington, Oregon, Hong Kong, Germany, wherever there's McDonald's. The quarter pounder of cheese is going to taste the exact same no matter where I go. The fries are going to be salted the exact same way. And I think that's great.
That's because the standard is written in their process, and it is upheld throughout no matter whichever McDonald's you go to, because they follow the same standards. They have the same accountability for their food, the quality of their food.
But here's the flip side to this. Accountability does not always mean something bad. I have a 3-year-old. I mentioned it before. I have told him, and I'm trying to ingrain this in him, he can either earn something good or he can earn something bad. Accountability doesn't always mean discipline. It can be good or bad. So if you have somebody who's accountable and they're accountable to their actions, if they're doing something good, if the standard again is X and you have somebody producing at a Z level, right, which is 2 levels above X, then that person should get rewarded. That person should get recognized, whatever that case is. That's still accountability, a good kind of accountability, and I think that's something that is lost on a lot of managers.
I 100% agree with you, because when someone is stepping above and beyond and they're not recognized, after some time, that person is just going to fall down to everyone else's subpar standards. So you want to try to pull everybody up. So if someone's doing well and they get recognized for doing well, then all the other ones that are pulling subpar, it should bring them up. Be like, man, that guy got a $100 bonus because he kicked ass this month. He fucking showed that he can do it. He can walk the walk and talk the talk. I want to be like that guy, instead of going the other way around by just showing favoritism to the people that aren't performing.
Right. If I sit there and say, hey, we all did good, everyone gets a bonus, then the people who worked hard are like, yeah, I finally earned a bonus. But the people who didn't work as hard is like, holy shit, those guys actually got me a bonus today. But over time, those people, those high performers, are either going to leave because it's not a good work environment, or they're going to go into a subpar mode because they're like, well, what does it matter? If they got the same bonus that I did, and I did more work than they did, then why am I gonna bust my ass? If we're all just gonna get the same cookie at the end of the day, what does it matter?
Which is the perfect analogy for accountability as a whole. At the end of the day, you want everybody to be accountable for their actions. Period.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can't say it any better. But I do caution those managers, those leaders, those supervisors. If you're trying to hold somebody accountable and you're trying to discipline them, don't use a shotgun. I hate group discipline. Coming from a background where I had a brother and a sister growing up, and if me and my brother and my sister all maybe we're doing something we shouldn't have been doing, or maybe it was just my brother not doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing, and I got punished for it, man, that was the biggest bullshit flag I ever raised in my life. You want to think of it as more of a sniper rifle versus a shotgun type aspect. You've got to sit there and go, oh, if this person is doing bad, I don't need to punish the group. The process is not what's broken. It's the person performing the process that's broken.
In the same concept, if it is a group, if I have 5 people that's supposed to be teaming together to build a widget and the widget is not produced, then yeah, I probably should use the shotgun to get everyone on board. because something's not meshing well there. But if I see all 4 of the people are kicking ass and taking names, and one person is playing Candy Crush on their phone, it just would sour the whole team if I was to use a shotgun instead of a sniper rifle. Because one bad apple spoils the bunch, but if you take that one bad apple out, it's not going to spoil the bunch. And then everybody can see he's being held accountable for his actions, and I don't have to pull his weight.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of leaders, they tend to overlook that. They sit there and they think, well, it must be my process is broken, so then I need to micromanage the whole. Well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe you need to do a little bit of more digging, a little bit more investigative work, which sucks because on the leadership part, if you're a manager, you're a supervisor, usually you're already task saturated, right? Just the nature of the beast. You're usually already task saturated. If you can take time out of your busy schedule to actually do some investigative work and find out like, hey, person A, B, and C are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're producing the widget an hour or over, and person D is not. Okay, maybe maybe my process isn't broken. Maybe it's just person D sucks at life and they need to find a different job, you know?
Yeah, they need to go out and sweep the parking lot or something.
Right. I mean, whatever the case happens to be, I don't know. But I mean, there's always more to the story than what you think it is. And who knows? Maybe person D is not having a good week. Maybe they're usually a star performer, but they're going through some personal stuff, or maybe they're going through something else, and you find out what that is, and you can help them. That's still holding them accountable. Hey, WTF, what are you doing? What's going on? Why are you not producing the way you should produce? And they tell you, oh, I'm going through a divorce. Well, okay, fine. What do you need to do? Maybe you should take some leave. Maybe you should take some time off, to get your mind right, to get your situation handled. And then you can come back and talk to us and see if we can't start producing. But I got to tell you, if you're still not going to produce, maybe you need to go find a different job that suits you better and suits your talents better.
One thing about accountability that I have discovered throughout my leadership time frame is when you hold someone accountable and it's too strong, that you're now nitpicking or being too harsh with your accountability because they just didn't quite make the deadline that you were seeking out, is they'll tend to start hiding things from you. And you don't want a team that's going to hide things from you. You still want to hold people accountable, but if they're starting to hide things from you, then you can't hold them accountable and you can't fix the problem. By the time it actually comes and rears its ugly head, it's too late. And now, you being the leader, you're going to be held accountable for everyone's actions that's up under you.
Yep, and that's the thing, the supervisors, there's always somebody above somebody else, right? Whatever, I mean, even if you're the owner of the business, there's somebody above you, whether it's the health department, the IRS, the government, whatever it ends up being, the city council, there's somebody above you that you still kind of have to report to and say, hey, why are you not up to code? Why are you not filing your taxes? Why are you not doing something X, Y, and Z? This could be a gajillion things. I know in the medical field, hey, why are you not filing your insurance payments correctly? You're going to get dinged on this stuff. Then it comes back to, because the person I hired wasn't doing their job correctly. But that doesn't fly. They don't care. They don't care that person wasn't doing their job. They look at you saying, well, okay, why? It's still ultimately your responsibility to get it done and get it done correctly and in a timely manner. However you got to get it done, you got to get it done.
Well, that paints a perfect picture of the accountability on the other side. If I am doing something and it fails, then I have to be man enough or prideful enough to say, hey, I'm accountable for my actions. Yes, I messed up. It was me. Instead of making excuses for everything that you've done or trying to blame others for your failures, just take the accountability for your actions and learn from it and then move forward. The biggest problem I see is, with some of the millennials or Generation Z or whatever they're called now is they don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. There's always some other reason why they are not accountable for what happened.
Many times I catch somebody red-handed not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I ask them, well, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And they give me some sort of excuse of, well, because I couldn't do it because this other person was doing something else. No. No, that don't fly. Because this person's doing whatever they're supposed to be doing does not preclude you from having to do what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe you have to put in 15 minutes after work to make sure you get stuff done. Maybe you have to take a little bit of work home to make sure you get your stuff done. Whatever the case happens to be, you still got to get what you were contractually obligated, whatever your job is, you still have to get that done, no matter if somebody else was in your way or not.
The perfect example is you was talking about that one person that I'm going to be 15 minutes late and you're just going to have to deal with it. Then that person, the boss or whatever, is accountable for that action of allowing that to happen. So now the next person that's going to be 15 minutes late, is the boss going to accept that action as well? Or is he going to hold that person accountable, which means he needs to go back to the other person and be like, look, I can't let everybody be 15 minutes late, because if I do that, now I'm accountable for everyone getting behind on their work because I allowed this one person to be 15 minutes late. It just doesn't work that way. That's not how the dominoes are set up. You pull one domino out of the bunch, all of them aren't going to fall. So who's accountable? The person that set up the dominoes or the one that's missing?
Yeah, I would say both. And ultimately, the person who set up their dominoes is absolutely 100% accountable. Because if I'm the one in control of the situation, I've read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and they always talk that one of the chapters in there is your spheres of influence. If you can control something, then you need to focus on what you can control. If you can't control the actions of that person, let's say they're 15, 20 minutes late, the only thing you can control is whether they still have a job or not. If you're going to sit there and just constantly write them up and then they don't have a job, that's on them. That's not on you. I know a lot of people don't like it because they're like, well, times are tough. I need people. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to, make them not have a job because, one bad thing, maybe they produce 3 widgets in the time that they're there when they're supposed to produce 1, but they're 15, 20 minutes late. Well, I'm sorry, 15, 20 minutes late is still not up to the standard that I asked for you to do. They could still be a great worker, but it's just not good enough. I need you to do everything that I asked you to do.
And then in a twisted way, even if you don't like that person, they're still showing favoritism, because favoritism doesn't necessarily mean that it's your favorite person. It's just showing that you're letting someone get away with more than others.
Yeah, so preferential treatment.
Yeah, and that should never be allowed, especially when a time stringent type atmosphere, or even really any kind of work, because that's not what you're hired to do. So if you're not holding that accountability and keeping that action there to where that person would eventually be fired or let go, or their bonus is held, or their pay is cut, or something, there's got to be some kind of action to warrant their behavior to show that accountability. Because back to that scenario of one bad apple spoils the bunch. So eventually all the other apples are going to start going bad too.
Yeah.
So you get that one bad apple out of it.
I've read papers on college professors where they say, hey, let's just do an experiment of everybody where I'm going to average the grades and everybody's going to get the same grade. They started out and the first test was everybody got a B because those that studied hard, pulled everybody's grades up. Well, those that studied hard were upset because they should have earned an A. And those that didn't study as hard were ecstatic because they didn't have to study as hard, but they still got a B. They averaged at the end of the semester, the whole class was averaging an F because all those that studied hard, they didn't really care anymore because they're like, well, what does it matter? I'm going to get the same grade as everybody else. So why am I going to put in the extra effort when nobody else is putting in the extra effort? And so it just pulls everybody down and it just doesn't end up working.
No, not at all. My kid was in one of her schools was like that. Like, the kids turn in an assignment, they got their grade. If a kid did not turn in an assignment, they still get half credit for not turning in an assignment at all. I was like, no, I don't like that. I want, if my kid didn't turn in a paper or something, give her a 0. Give her the 0. Let her fail. I want her to fail. I want her to see that she's accountable for her actions. I want that to happen. And if that doesn't happen, then you get a society of everyone gets a trophy. That's not fair to the kids that actually came to practice every day to earn that trophy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm in my last third of my cigar, and I got to tell you, this has kind of come out with a coffee cream type flavor, and it's delicious. In the last third, it's got a hint of spice in this last third of this cigar, and it's absolutely amazing. I love CAO cigars. This is probably one of my favorites.
I would definitely need to puff on one myself. This Olivia Series D 135th anniversary edition. I will say it came into its own because one of my favorite flavor profiles, it has turned into. It still has the cedar, but I can get notes of caramel at the end, and I am a sucker for caramel.
I love caramel. Yeah, I love caramel. I love all those sorts of notes. That, to me, I would love to puff on one of those cigars. I think you were talking about when you went to TPE, that guy said, he went and bought several boxes of that type of cigar. So now that you've smoked it, would you be willing to go buy a box or two of that cigar?
I wouldn't necessarily go out and purchase a whole box of these cigars because of the flavor profile at the beginning has that pepper and cedar. I didn't find that appetizing at the beginning. It definitely made its way through until I got to the second, third. After that, it was great. I would definitely say it's humidor worthy. Would I buy a box? I don't think I will buy a box, but I am definitely enjoying it, and it pairs perfectly with this Hennessy.
That's good. That's good. So, we talked about the sizes and shapes of cigars. We talked about what the numbers meant, the inches versus the ring gauge. Then we went into that leadership aspect of accountability, whether it be good or bad types of accountability. I think we could sit here and talk probably for a while and kind of go in somewhat in circles and beat a dead horse of how important accountability is in a business, in a leadership, and a management supervisory aspect, and I just think it's one of those big things out there that I think leaders and supervisors tend to have too much heart. They're too nice, and they don't want to hurt people's feelings. They want to be for the people. Well, you can be for the people, but you still got to do what you're supposed to be doing.
Right, and just the different sizes of the cigars that open my wardrobe of cigar selection much grander. I mean, the Churchill was my go-to, and now I have all different sizes to pick from. With the accountability of showing favoritism is definitely not the direction to go, which I think you said before, a lot of leaders tend to lead with the feelings more than accountability.
This has been a great talk. As always, I enjoy it. But you guys have been listening to Leadership of the Leaf. Please go check out our Instagram. Please hit that subscribe button so you guys can always be aware of when new episodes come out. For me, don't be that asshole.
And remember, there's no such thing as bad cigars. There's just better ones.
Absolutely. Don't forget, we need to follow the podcast so we know when new episodes drop.
Thank you for listening to Leadership of the Leaf. The comments and opinions expressed by the host and guests does not reflect the opinions of those that broadcast this show, nor does it reflect any of our affiliates.